Sup? Arknights' most hated YouTuber here, and I can say this with a straight face unlike Supa since I see the numbers and know who can actually make this claim. But the reason I open with the Italian man's catchphrase now is because he brought up my video when he made his bad launch operators video since I made my video first. Now I will play this part of that video. If this video does well enough, I'll make the other half of this and talk about the operators who have done the best these past few years. God, I love Unicorn Overlord. Since I was already sitting on this video for months, yeah, it takes me that long to make stuff, I figured I might as well make my list, and I'm assuming that if you're watching this, then you've probably already seen his video because again, I see the numbers. Either way, my video is going to be a little bit different than his since he replaced the defenders on his list with the characters I wasn't even going to talk about, so I'm hoping you all see this as a two-cake scenario versus the other part of that meme. So let's start with the characters he deemed too boring to discuss, the OG Queens of Defender Knights, Saria and Hoshiguma, which I will just refer to as Sariguma to keep it succinct. Now, is it wrong to say that Sariguma share a simple role? No, they are lane holders, but compared to operators like Blaze or Mountain, who gradually fell out of favor because they don't follow your taxes while going down on you the same way wis'adel and Logos do, Sariguma were not always treated as equals. Saria obviously had way more utility compared to Hoshiguma, because as a medic defender, Saria could play more flexibly as she could either selfishly stay away from the squad, or she could be the linchpin of the team and keep them healthy with either skill 1 or 2, depending on map layout. What I think is more interesting to discuss is Hoshiguma's growth, as she went from being seen as the second worst launched 6-star in the game to the absolute wall that she is now. She gained this reputation because back in launch, there weren't strong enough enemies that you couldn't easily DPS away, so the need to stall for damage wasn't that important. Even just one 6-star carried your account for months back on launch. Hell, I was a skill 3 Hoshiguma believer. That's how down bad I was on my account. Now, I want to talk about the stuff that really gets my nerd brain rolling, and that's the numbers. At base, Hoshiguma will have 723 defense when maxed out. This number goes up to 783 with max trust, and if you've played as long as I have, you might have her at pot 3 or higher, which gives her another 30 defense, pushing her over that 800 threshold. Now, you get a choice between either of her modules, which is one of the few cases of having genuine flexibility, as the X module gives her 200 more HP, 140 extra defense, and an extra 20% defense buff when she is defending, which she should be 99% of the time. While the over 1200 defense brick house is a good choice, you could go for the Y module, which gives 70 attack instead of HP. I don't know why, because as the biggest S3 believer, and you can tell I mean that since I have that S3 M3'd, this is not enough. And while the 100 defense isn't as nice as our X module, you get the illustrious block 4 Hoshi with an extra 10% chance to negate damage thanks to her first talent getting buffed, meaning you have better than 1 in 3 odds of just saying no to enemy damage. Of course, I haven't talked about what really makes Hoshiguma elite now, and that's Thorns, and for once I don't mean the hot Iberian man, but her S2. A flat 30% defense is the type of stuff you'd expect in IS for a buff, but that's only after hard stacking into it on multiple floors. Hoshiguma just has this as a default option. Her insane tankiness makes her more and more useful as time went on, and her passive damage resists help her keep up even when arts or true damage gets thrown at us. I know this was mostly a Hoshiguma glazing part of the video, but I've talked about Saria before in previous videos, and nothing has changed there. Sure, she is nowhere close to the best operator in the game anymore, but considering how useful Shu is with her S3, Saria gets to keep her role so that the other defenders can shine, and the constant stacking of heals doesn't really change at all, no matter what part of the game you're in, whether you're early on in the account, or you're in late game content and you just need another bad bitch to heal you. Arknights had to make more money, and the only way to do that in a gacha is by making stronger and stronger enemies for us to face. This resulted in the meta we're in now, where my yandere waifu became a stripper to power up, and I am not complaining. However, for the squishies to survive long enough to rip their skills, they either need wis'adel level range, a brick wall like these women, or a healer like our next operator to survive, which is Nightingale. Remember when we needed her S3 to survive Tallulah? Actually, let me rephrase that. Do you remember Tallulah? Because I know the writers didn't, because seriously, where the fuck is this 9 reunion story going? I know there's no payoff for it in chapter 14, and I just want my girl to be free and happy. She's suffered enough and is doing that vague BS where she doesn't properly explain her situation like it's banana fish or something. Anyways, where was I? Oh, right, Nightingale. Her S3 is insane levels of overkill, and I do not look forward to the day where this puppy becomes mandatory, but for most of the content, Aya Alter is your best choice, But if you don't have her, or want to cover a smaller area given map restrictions, Nightingale is a very, very close second. The three things she has beyond her healing are buffs, arts damage mitigation, and her summons. Between skills 2 and 3, you can either give your operators a barrier that negates a couple hundred arts damage, which is becoming increasingly frequent, or grant an incredibly potent 80% attack, but wait a minute, 80%? And regardless of which skill you use, you're giving at least a 30% res buff to operators in her range, which makes that extra tile on her X module significantly more useful than you would think. Lastly, her summons are cracked. While zero block may not seem useful, the fact that they draw aggro, have 75 res, and a 30% physical dodge chance, it doesn't matter that their HP gives them a 30-second half-life. These phantoms are surviving for way longer than they have any right to, and the same goes for the poorly placed operator you left in a corner. Nightingale basically grants immortality to your operators when you use her, and she has incredible buffs on top of strong healing, which, in addition to crowd control, makes you really wonder how on earth this came out as a launch unit. The next two operators are why this video isn't titled Launch Operators, but they are the ones that Supa mentioned in his video, and it is for obvious reasons. Bagpipe and Ceobe share a Sariguma dynamic in that one was seen as a goddess from the start, and the other had to rise from the muck to get to their spot. Again, I've talked about Bagpipe before, and will probably praise her and her ENVA another time, so to keep it brief, her Vanguard SP charge is like Hoshi's passive defense buff to all defenders, in that it encourages you to bring more Vanguards when you bring Bagpipe, so you're bringing Flagpipe or even Inez, because who the hell uses Psyleech? Seriously, how did I not get more shit for this when I said she was a top 10 6-star back in the day? Anyways, by printing more DP, you bring out non-Vanguard operators more quickly, essentially meaning Bagpipe buffs all other operators by acceleration, meaning that this country bumpkin buffs units like Logos and Degenbrecher just by existing. It helps that she's a strong unit herself and can handle initial waves, and you can refund her DP so that you can further accelerate your game plans. She's the modern Texas in that you can have her on your team, never deploy her, and still provide significant value to the squad. This leaves me with the hardest sell since I am making this video in a post-Logos world, and he's the reason I didn't have other casters on the list. But it's time for me to talk about the girl in the thumbnail, folks. Ceobe. Now, a lot of what I'm going to say does echo Supa's points on Ceobe because they're the reason I wanted to put her on this list when I thought of this video before we even got Logos. Yes, I take that long to make videos, and somehow my uptime is still better than Dusk. However, Ceobe has something that makes her stand out, unlike Aya and Ifrit, who are completely overshadowed by Logos now. Ceobe's best skill was always her second one, and that's because of her first talent. Her first talent has her deal additional damage to the target equal to 40% of their base defense. Ceobe still deals arts damage, however, this means she can take out tanky enemies with no issue. But this is just base Ceobe. With her superior X module, the talent changes from having a flat 50% effect that increases to 75% with consistent attacks. Now I can finally go over her second skill, Really Hot Knives, which has her attack interval reduced to a third of what it normally is, and she will prioritize the enemies with the highest defense, essentially maxing out her damage. What this means is that whenever there's an enemy with insane defensive stats, Ceobe can actually outperform Logos. Said circumstances are insanely uncommon for now, but over time, Ceobe plus whatever meta operator does absurd physical damage will be a duo that can reliably clear high-end content. While Nymph was a niche operator who became essential for high-end content after we saw the horrors unfold in CN while her banner dropped in Global, Ceobe was always good for high-end content, and it's crazy to see that the caster I got instead of AF Fiala back in the day, and was undeniably outclassed by, somehow managed to beat the odds and become an incredible operator in her own right thanks to her uncapped damage potential. Now, Ceobe alter when please. I want my good doggo to be actually relevant and not just in these crackpot scenarios. And that's it. Check the links in the description since I made another channel where I store my VODs after I stream on Twitch because that place sucks as a platform now and has about 5 more years of life left. Also, I'm making non-Arknight stuff for a while, so hopefully y'all will be here when I come back with the milk. Peace.